Welcome to a community built of tomorrow's business leaders. Hey guys, I'm William Freitas, and this is the Socius podcast. Welcome back to another episode. Today we have Chris Melotti. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
So Chris runs Melotti Media, yes. Tell me a little bit about what you do, and I guess what we'd like to get here is a little bit about who Chris is, how'd you get to, what it is that you do, and what makes you tick?
Yeah, well, look, that's a big question. So I rebranded recently to Melotti Content Media, but it's the same thing. So what got me here? Okay, so today I'm a marketing consultant and what I call a message marketer. So my job is to help brands in three ways. One is strategy, which is helping them understand their goals and their customers and getting them there. The second is foundational elements, which means building up their brand messaging guidelines. So like their positioning and their core statements and propositions and articulations of their value. And the last is executions, which is about content. So producing content that they put out in the wild based on the first two pillars. How I got here. Do you want me to break it down into pieces?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
The background. How did we get here?
Yeah. So for me, I studied marketing and I studied law and loved academia and I loved learning. And then I got a few roles in a few corporate positions and I fell in love with what I did. And I'm a very passionate person. So as you can imagine, I got really immersed in these roles. And that's where I discovered my thrill of creativity, right? I love solving problems in a creative way. And being a passionate guy, people sort of get swept up in it and they love it and we come up with ideas. And I use that throughout my creative roles. And then I eventually got into, I'm talking big pharma, and I worked in health and all these real estate and all these big industries. And when I finally went into agency world, and that's when I realized how they functioned. And so that double perspective gave me an idea of client side and agency side. And from there, I went into copywriting. And I was like, I really love messaging and writing because in all my degrees, I wrote 30,000 word assignments and things. I found I had a bit of a flair for that. And I started there and then I grew outwards from there. And I built this agency and back then, a lot of the copywriters were they did it as a hobby, right? So this was over 15 years ago. And they were doing it as I can write, I've got kids and I can just stay at home and do a bit of writing. And it was just basic work back then. Mm-hmm. And I came in with a marketing perspective, which was quite unique. I found that a lot of clients, they were like, oh, you provide all the insights and the background and then you write. And even though it sounds mainstream today, that was completely novel back then. So a few clients told a few clients and it exploded overnight. And suddenly I was working all day in my job and all night at my agency. And I was like, I better go out there. So I started to take on work and the rest is history. It was such a unique model because people were really interested in getting my insights. And they were like, for example, they would say, write my website. And I go, why? And they'd go, we want to attract more clients. I'm like, great. So let's approach it this way. Or why are we doing this? Who are we talking to? And again, it sounds mainstream now, but back then it was just not. And so what I did was then I hired people and now we are one of the leading agencies in this message communication space because I've evolved it so much. And that's in a very quick nutshell. Yeah.
And look, we can go straight into the meat of it now for the time being.
Yeah.
Copywriting, many business owners might be thinking that copywriting is just putting pen to paper or writing a 500-word page for my website or whatever it might be.
Yes.
But you raised a great point.
Yes.
The question why,
Yes.
Tell us more about that because for me, I can see that it's copywriting with purpose.
Yes.
Right? Because it's not just about putting pen to paper. It's not just about putting a bunch of words on a screen, right? And I'm sure everyone can start to think what the next question is. With ChatGPT and AI writing things for you,
yes,
how is it that writing with purpose has changed?
Good question.
During that time?
And as you can imagine, I get this a lot. Look, you know what the funny thing is, right? Like you've identified well, there's writing and then there's writing with purpose, writing for marketing. And this is the biggest even AI struggles with this, is the real skill is in copywriting is actually not to do with the writing itself. It's the background and the strategy and the marketing behind it. And that is why I stood out so much at that time, because at that time it was just, they were just like, oh, I just need you to write things because I don't have time. Now it's strategy based. And so even today with AI, the nuances and the skills still remains, because think of AI as like this massive cannon, right? It's got a lot of strength and a lot of expertise. But if you fire it in the wrong direction, he doesn't know. You have to know. Like insurance, right? If someone goes, I need to be insured for cybersecurity, I'll just do that, or I'll ask AI to do that without knowing the business, the circumstance, the customer, the situation, the scenario. That insurance is not going to work. And it's the same with copywriting, right? Is you, even if you give it a go yourself, and I encourage a lot of people to, but the real strength of copywriting is nothing to do with the writing itself at start. The real skill is, what do your customers look for, right? What do they care about? There's a lot of competition out there. How am I going to ensnare their emotions, right? How am I going to get them to stop scrolling? And it's hard, because a lot of people go, well, I can just shock them, right? But that's not the skill, right? The skill is, on a website page, how can I make people pay attention in a relevant way? And my tagline for Melotti Content Media is, we make brands relevant. And the reason why we say that is because if you don't have the right language and the right articulation of your value in something that your customers care about, they won't watch, they won't look. And think about you, like, would you spend any time at all on something that isn't relevant to you? Absolutely not. And you can throw AI and your own writing at it all you want. If you haven't thought about those steps, it's going to be irrelevant and people don't care.
We could broadly, and you've kind of mentioned it already, but I could broadly say marketing itself is often viewed as just a bunch of skills, putting pen to paper in copywriting or graphic design, whatever it might be. For me, it goes well beyond that. I did marketing at university as well.
You mentioned.
And
that's the question back to you. I know, sorry, this is for me, but like
interviewing the interviewer.
Yeah, right. Sorry. But do you see what you learned in uni? And as great as they are fundamentals, you probably look at your business now, when it comes to your marketing, it's problem solving, isn't it?
Well, I was going to go one step further and say, for me, what marketing is understanding consumer behavior.
Correct.
Understanding how it is that the subject, being the person consuming that piece of marketing, is how they're going to respond.
Yes.
That is not, you could say that's a skill, but that's a learned understanding of what it is that you do and what it is marketing most broadly.
And that's the thing. My real strength, where I found, lies in not trying to replace the client. Like, some people go, but how do you know my business? Well, that's not what my job is. My job is to use you and your knowledge and use my expertise and combine it with that, like you said, that learned experience and firsthand expertise, and apply it. So that's why a lot of people say, oh, do you specialize in a particular industry? No, because the principles, like I work with cyber, security, medical, lawyers, finance, accounting, products, service, it doesn't matter. What it is like this morning I had a client that did plants and interior design for plants. And the principle's the same. He said, I need my website done. And he said, I've written this myself and it's not working. And I went through it and I said, this is too generic. You have so much more to offer than your website. Your website sounds like a mum and dad brand, whereas you have a full team of technicians. And I said, none of this, it sounds rare. Like, if you were to read it at a glance, you'd think it ticks all the boxes. Like AI, right? People go, AI is written better than I can, I'll use it. But the real difference is, what have you got there that explains your value and articulates your difference?
So take us through your process, because I guess, again, many people at home might think copywriting is a very linear approach. Okay, I want to write this, write it for me, come back, which is very much what ChatGPT does. But tell us about your process, and then let's get an understanding as to how that differs.
Yeah, and it's AI is that process, that linear process, right? Like, I'm a dentist, I put in, write my homepage and up it comes, right? The way I work is where you really want to stand out, right? And you really want to get to the crux of what your business is. And if you think about today's market, you must, right? How many insurance companies are right next to you, right? There'd be hundreds. The difference that you have must come through in the way that your customers see, otherwise they don't choose you. So what I do is I sit down and I go, okay, talk me through everything, right? What's the scenario? I don't even start with anything pointed. I say, talk me through the scenario. Who are your customers? Who's with your team? What's worked? What hasn't? It's always strategy based, because if I can understand the context, I can write your copy. And so I sit there and I say, where are you going? What's different about you? Where do you find, this is the question to ask, where do you find people don't get you? Where do you feel that they go, this is about price? Because as soon as they talk about price, it means they don't understand your value. It's everything. I talk them through the scenario, situation, circumstances, where you're going, where you want to be, all of that, because all of that must be expressed in your writing and in the way that your web, and it's not just writing, anything like video scripts and anything you do.
And is that something you do at Melotti? So
Everything.
Melotti Content Media. We're going to say
Yes.
Melotti Content
the reason I
Media.
changed the name was it was Melotti Media, and I changed it to Content Media because media, people were thinking it was a TV station.
I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, so I did.
So then, not to oversimplify it,
No.
you don't just do copywriting now.
No.
You do, I guess, how would you explain what you do?
So one of the biggest shifts in my business over the last few years is, the funny thing was, when I first started, thinking about my story now, people were paying for the copywriting and the strategy was like the bonus that separated me. It's actually now reversed. People now pay me for the strategy and the problem solving sessions and the consulting and mentoring marketing sessions, right? And then the copywriting is like an added bonus now, because what happens is I will work with a client and I'm finding that the DIY culture is diminishing and the DIFM, do it for me, is becoming a big thing, right? Yeah. So what I'm seeing is people bring me in for a strategy session, which I have Christopher Melotti Consulting as a brand, and I do that, and then they go, love it, now do it for me. So what I do is that strategy session is everything. Clients love talking about their brands, their personalities, what they want to do, their aspirations. And then what I do is I go, I've got ideas. And they pour out of my head, right? And these poor clients go, oh my God. And so I record those sessions because of that. And then what we do is then I build a full to-do list. And I'll say, in February, we do this, March, April, May. And I put all that stuff together. And then they go, great, do it. And so that writing isn't blogs always, right? It can be videos, scripts, presentations, pitch kits, brochures, even internal documents, brand core messaging guidelines. It's a whole array of different things, even award submission writing, all of that. But it's all targeted at that strategy's goal, which is where do you want your business to be and how can I put content together that's going to make you relevant?
Got it. Perfect. I couldn't say it any better, so I asked you to say it.
Oh, well, there you go. Go back and walk the talk.
And tell us a little bit about Chris Melotti, I guess, in terms of your background. Where did you grow up?
Yep.
How did you get into marketing? Did you know that you always wanted to do marketing?
No. So what I found was I've always been a big extrovert, right? And I was very passionate about things. And when I studied in year 12, I did business studies, and marketing was one of the internal topics, and I fell in love with it. And you know what the funny thing is, it wasn't because it was pretty colors or anything, because in business studies in year 12, it kind of is a bit 2D, right? And it's all like, oh, it's the logo, right? But when I found the biggest challenge, and it's even got more and more accentuated today, the biggest challenge is when business marketing isn't working, because you can have the best product in the world, but if no one knows about it, no one cares. No one buys it, right? You can have the most differentiated opportunity or something, whatever you've got in your business. But if no one knows about it and no one sees it, no one's relevantly relates to it, they don't care. So it was that I loved, because I loved getting into it. And I loved coming up with like when you have a business, I can solve anything. Like if a business goes, I'm not making enough leads, I talk them through and I can do that and solve that. So I loved that about marketing. Then I studied it in Macquarie Uni in Ryde. So I grew up there and fell in love with it. I joined several businesses in Ryde and local areas. And, I've won a couple of marketing awards along the way. And the reason I won was because I showed the power of marketing to industries that weren't familiar with it. So I won Chief Marketing Officer of the Year of New South Wales in 2017 by the Australian Marketing Institute. I won that because I was in a big real estate business. And what I did was I actually used marketing to automate all this stuff, which again, it sounds workaday today. But when I had agents that were selling $7 million properties with a pad and pen. And then there were small other agencies that were tiny ones next door that were using an iPad. And I had about 15 agents, and they ranged from like 23 to 50, 60. And it's not like I had an old workforce. People were young and they weren't using iPads. So I bought them all iPads and I set up this whole automation system. And so then what happened was they resisted it for a long time. And I would go to all these open homes with them and they would put in the details and they're like, oh, it's so hard. I don't know details, right? This was, again, you think now it wouldn't happen, but they're like, oh, there's all this stuff. All of a sudden, the agents found that then that same person would rock up at a different property and they'd already go, oh, Charlotte, you're back. Oh, I can see you've visited my colleague's property. What did you think of this one? But suddenly everything was automated and was all done. And they went from hate and displeasure to suddenly praising. And I put that forward as an award and won it over like Telstra and Qantas and Domain, all these big things, simply because the AMI judges said in a bunch of, like in an industry where people didn't like the idea of marketing and didn't see the potential of marketing other than a pamphlet, suddenly they saw this automation system and they were like, oh my God, it works.
And the funny thing is, that is, in my mind, not even all that much marketing per se. You know, some people might think marketing as advertising or creating a market or selling, whereas this is really just an operational tool that allows you to market better.
And that's what I saw was it was a CRM. So a CRM MarTech tool is what we call it. So yes, you're right. It seems operational on the surface, but the platform that I used was basically like a massive customer relationship management process. And that is actually under marketing because you're collecting new clients' details, connecting with old clients' details. I mean, one of the biggest problems that businesses don't do today is nurture old clients. Like they constantly in this churn of new, which is you have to, right? But there's also this, like regularly every month, I get my team to go through my CRM and go to old clients and say, hey, we haven't spoken in a while. The amount of work you get from that reigniting, they go, oh, right, we've got an award coming up, Chris. I'm so sorry, I didn't even think of you. Yeah. And that whole thing.
And you say award because that you do some award writing submissions.
Yeah, it's one of our specialties actually, because again, you can use ChatGPT, but what really works is nuance. Yeah. Like when you look at the question, if you were going for something, Will, and you said, you know, what makes this you the insurance company of 2025, right? Of course, you can go to ChatGPT and say, we're great, look at our website, find something, and it'll go, the team, you know, we're amazing, right? But actually what it takes is thinking outside the square. Like we already see ourselves as a leader because of these reasons. And so as a result, this is an opportunity to get the platform that we need to show the standard of insurance. And suddenly that is something that AI wouldn't write, that the judging panel would go, love that thinking.
So then to wrap up, I guess, a lot of your success over the years, what would you say the number one factor is for that success?
Yeah, I would say, there's a few. How honest do you want me to be?
Be as real as you can be.
I would say there's been a couple of things, but a lot of it comes down to, I would say, my personality. And I know that might sound odd, right? But hear me out. I have a genuinely enthusiastic personality, and people love to feel heard, supported, respected, and marketing is that space because everything is subjective, right? So everything that a client proposes and ideas they have versus my idea, it's all subjective, right? And so and I don't fake this, I genuinely get passionate about the people I talk to, right? And the clients that I work with. So when I get excited and that's how I get into that zone, right? Those ideas that come out of my head is when I'm excited. When that happens, people sit there and they love that I'm more enthusiastic about their business than they are. And that is where because then all of a sudden I make the space safe for them. Yeah. And then they go, Chris is really taking this seriously and he's got some great ideas. I can come out of my shell a bit. Even the most quietest clients will be dancing on the ceiling soon because they suddenly get my vibrancy. And then what happens is I don't do that to manipulate them. I do that to help them.
Yeah.
And then I get in that zone, and then we leave with like 5 pages of notes of executions. And that is the secret to my success, is because my consulting services are in high demand because of that.
Yeah.
Because there's hundreds of consultants that get the book out and go, yes, you should be doing this, right?
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, why don't we try something different?
And the passion is contagious, right?
100%.
And I'd say that is a huge part of your success.
Yes.
But out of interest, to play devil's advocate, how do you scale your personality? Because you're one person, right?
And this is the controversial part. I can't. And this is the thing, right? As much as I can teach, and I teach, I have a great team, right? I have a team of about 8, and they are fantastic. Some of them have been with me for like 5-6 years, and I love it dearly, right? But you can't. And the thing is, I QC everything. And I've spoken to all of these financial people and mentors and business coaches, and they all say the same thing. Chris, you can't be in everything. And it came to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't care, right? And I really mean that. Like I said, I would rather have a successful business that I'm proud of, that isn't as scalable and as profitable, but that makes me happy. I have the lifestyle I want. I have the positioning I want. And I have the team that I love, and the team respect me. And that's honestly enough. Like it is, I've had multiple people come in and say, Chris, you need to move yourself and out of that and out of that. But especially with AI, there's too many ways that you can get made redundant. There's too many ways that you can fall behind. There's too many competitors out there. My brother's even said to me, look at some of your competitors that drive Ferraris, right? But I even say to them, look at their reputation though. If you go into Google, there's like 500 one-star reviews.
See, I love this because in essence, when anyone gets into business, they get into business because they're passionate about what they do generally, or they're good at what they do. Mm-hmm. Everyone talks about how do you scale your business. But no one really stops to think about it and say, well, what's the business that you're going to be most passionate about at the end? And what's the business that you're going to be happy about, the reputation that you have at the end?
Yep.
And I can most certainly hear that. There are other things that we could do in our business that reduces the quality of what it is that we put out. That's not what I'm about.
No.
We would much prefer to grow slowly and grow at a pace that we can sustain and manage. When I say grow slowly, we've been growing pretty quick.
Yeah.
But at a pace that you can sustain and a pace that you can bring up the whole team along for the journey. It's not just about scaling the business. And I commend you for responding that way. Everyone was going to respond, okay, well, you can't multiply Chris Melotti. You only got one of them. But if that's the business that makes you proud, then so be it.
Yeah. And I always say the most dangerous sentence a client can say is you used to be good, or they used to be good. And it hurts, right? And I said to my team, I never want to hear that ever, right? Like, sure, I could earn 3 times, right? But how long is that going to last? And for me, it's important to show my face in public. And I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, he talks a big game, but he actually is terrible. And I can proudly say, no one thinks that, right? And I'm happy with that. And same, I scale proportionate, and it's growing. It's not like it's not. It is growing, right? I've got a great team. My sister joined a couple of years ago. It was the best thing to ever happen to my business because I'm the visionary and she's the implementer, and that was fantastic. And it's grown and we're doing really well. But at the same time, I could hire a whole team and just pump out things and promise the world and never deliver. But there's hundreds of agencies that do that, and they get caught up in negative reviews and people avoid them. And I don't want to be that.
Perfect. And so what's one of the key issues that you see in today's business world that you think needs to change?
Key issues. There's a few. I'm trying to think of at what scale. Do you mean like as in...
As broad or as micro as you like. We do like to get into the philosophical component of business.
Don't even get me started.
And I can see that you're getting excited just at the thought.
Yes. Yeah. I would say then my answer would be corporate identity. And what I found... there's a lack of, if you look around and you see, especially the larger businesses, there's a lot of, it's just a job for me. And that's okay. I'm not criticizing that. Some people, they're fine. Like they've got their families and work is work, right? And we're business owners. We love our business, right? So we're in a different area and different thought pattern. But I find that the biggest problem with attrition and people leaving and this constant recruitment cycle is people don't have something to cling to. People love story. They love a culture, right? And the biggest failing I feel that it's happened over the years, especially now, is there's a lack of something for people to cling to understand. And that it's not a tie into a service, but one of the services I actually built in response to that was corporate identity development, because it's not a plug. I found that so many businesses, before they even got to marketing, they didn't even know who they were. So like they were a corporate business that grew from a good area, then they've grown and they've expanded, and now everyone's siloed. HR has never spoken to marketing in their life. Like I've worked with some pretty big businesses in Australia, which I won't name, but I've been taken on a tour through their massive business, and they've gone, I don't know who's over there. And they're like, we're up in level 2, but I don't know who. I think they're this, and I think that's that team, but I'm not sure. And you're like, what's going on? And I'm not saying you have to know everyone, but at least know where the departments are. And so a corporate identity is something that's like vision and mission and who we are, what makes us proud, what are our adjectives, what do we relate to, where's our North Star? I think that has been neglected and forgotten. And so businesses and large corporations have become empty husks.
And so how do you build corporate identity?
It's through group sessions. So I actually bring in a few other partners with me, and we go into large businesses, and even small, but larger businesses, and we go in and we talk through. I mean, this is like we get representatives from all different departments, and we get the CEO and the CFO, the CMO, and then we get all these different departments together. And even like we've done it with like shoe businesses, and we've said, grab some people from some of the retail stores as well as the corporate staff, because what we're seeing is we need a representation of all. And suddenly each team realizes they're on a completely different page, and they actually don't know each other, and they don't know the brand and the business. And so if you can't define what your corporate identity is, how do you expect your customers to relate to you? Like think about the brands that are on your radar constantly. They know their corporate identity because inside out, their staff live it. Everyone feels passionate about it. The marketing, everything is about it, right? Like think, Apple, all those main ones.
Absolutely.
They know.
And I'd go as far as saying small businesses really need to consider this
100%.
From day one. It's something that as a team we talk about quarterly, actually.
There you go.
We review our values quarterly and say, is it still something that we live by? And it's funny because as a team, we've kind of feel like we've outgrown our values slightly.
And that's good,
and
because then you can change.
It's great. I mean, it's not to say that, correct. It's not to say that we've outgrown or outlived, basic, things like empowerment or growth. Mm-hmm. But there's just part of our identity now wants something else to cling on to.
Yep.
And as a small business, I strongly believe that when staff come in, they need to be able to have something to wake up to.
Yeah.
Something to want to come into the office. And I think gone are the days where it becomes about integrity and passion.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like they are very generic values that don't necessarily cling for anyone.
Yeah. Here's a tip. Start with a verb. So don't say integrity, right? You say exercising, practicing, living. Always start with some sort of verb, right? Because verbs are actions and they give direction. So if you just say integrity, then people go, I will act with integrity. Whereas if you say practice integrity at the utmost in every client interaction, suddenly there's a direction. It's like every time I speak to a client, that's when it applies. There's
a great example of which I'm telling the team about currently, actually. LSKD, I'm not sure if you're aware of their values, but you go into their stores now.
Good place.
And all of them are verbs. Or
yes.
Majority.
There you go.
Sweep the sheds.
See?
No one's big enough than the team. Mm-hmm. Everyone can undertake those small tasks.
Yep.
There's a better way to do it. Find it. So I completely resonate with them, and whoever's done their
smart,
values was fantastic.
But that's a good tip, right? You see how even at that level, and even like you said, well, your small business as well, which is growing, like you're already ahead of the game because you've identified the fact that you've outgrown them, right? Most businesses, see, the thing is when they start, this is where it goes wrong. The founder knows their culture because they're themselves, right? They're only one person. So their business is them and the culture is there. They get 2 people, 3 people, it's still there because the leader is leading with that culture. Suddenly 5, 6, dilution. And then suddenly people go, oh, I don't really care, it's a job. And that's when you get substitutable, right? So imagine like if you don't have a corporate identity in your business, well, people that are insurance brokers and people in your space, they go, well, I could work for Will, I could work for the guy down the road, I can work for her. And they go, what's the difference? It's still insurance, right? Whereas if you have a culture that's defined and lived, suddenly you go, I want to work with Will and the team because I feel like I belong here.
I strongly agree with this point. Culture for me is number one.
Yep.
Always will be. And if you ask anyone in my team, I will always prioritize culture over skill.
Great.
And
that's wonderful. This is the way we're addressing all the business problems right now. We've solved it.
100%. And, like it is the reason why people stay because they enjoy, where they work and enjoy what impact that company is doing.
Yeah.
Now, corporate identity is one thing, but how do you manage corporate identity in marketing? Because in today's business world where it is all about attention, it is all about fast moving attention. Now, when you talk about corporate identity, some people might often think, okay, well, I want to respond to this comment on Instagram and LinkedIn. I don't know what our corporate voice is.
Yeah.
I don't know how I should respond to this.
Yes.
Should we be posting a viral trend about how,
like a response. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a good question.
This is not to throw the team under the shade, but under the bus here. But they tried to get us all. A few of the team were suggesting that we should do a viral trend, which is we listen but we don't judge. And I was like, okay, like how is this relevant to
and that's
what
the thing.
we do, right?
For some insurance companies, that might be fine. Yours might not be. So it's a great question.
But the point that I'm making is out of interest, how do you manage that from a marketing perspective? Because there's some strong, points for doing some of those meme-like TikToks that produce attention, produce followers, produce likes, and produce brand awareness. But it doesn't necessarily always align with corporate identity. So how do you manage that?
Good question. So corporate identity is different to marketing, right? So what it is if you think about it, corporate identity is your blueprint. It's your business's DNA, right? But it doesn't mean that it's your marketing. So if you think about it, not to be too gross, but like if your corporate identity is like your bones and your muscle, right? And that's internal. Then you've got your marketing and your brand guidelines are your skin. Right? So I know it's a bit gross, but like it gets the point across, right? So think about it this way is your corporate identity always comes first, right? It's your team coming together, deciding who we are, what we stand for, what we do, how we do it, what we believe in, right? So all those values and everything like that. Then you take that foundational element and you build your brand guidelines. And your brand guidelines is all external, built upon the gravity or the anchor of your corporate identity. So your corporate identity forms like the basis. And then from that, your marketing should come from that. So if your corporate identity is that we are an ambitious insurance firm who's looking to provide peace of mind for everyone in Australia, right? Your marketing is the same. Your marketing I'm throwing this out. We're here for you, no matter who you are. Right? Do you see how it's a translation? And that's what you have to do. Every business should do those 2 steps. Build your corporate identity with your internal team and set those foundations up so everyone is on board. Then with your marketing team or whoever you've got, build your marketing out from there. So for example, if your corporate identity is we never ridicule, we don't judge, right? Then your marketing should have a tone of voice section that says we don't use funny memes, but we keep things neutral. Or you might say, we are the Joker business. Our corporate identity set the foundation that we don't take ourselves too seriously. So as a result, your marketing then is tone of voice is we play the jester, right? We're serious, but we play the hero jester where, we reply with memes and get on board. The other thing you brought out is just because it's attention doesn't mean it's the right attention. I teach a lot of marketing classes and I've had people that go, I have a huge following on LinkedIn or TikTok. And I go, fantastic. How many leads are you getting? And they go, oh, nothing, but I've got a huge following. Right? And then you look at their profile and they're posting all quotes, like motivational quotes. And you go, what do you do? And they go, oh, I'm a lawyer. And you go, but your followers aren't following you because you're a lawyer. They're following you because you're a motivational quote giver.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that people don't get attention mixed up with effective marketing. Attention is only good when it's relevant.
And when it's the right audience.
Correct.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Perfect. That is exactly what I would have loved to have delved into. So I appreciate that.
That's right. Was that too fast? You're kind of like, oh, it's done.
No, that was perfect. I mean, it's such a topical component that even we're discussing right now.
Yeah.
And I'm just conscious that anyone listening can sometimes potentially get a little bit lost in
the difference.
Where does corporate identity hinder or become a hindrance to the marketing team? And I guess that's where potentially, being the bones, corporate identity, and the skin being your brand guidelines. Sometimes brand guidelines can get in the way. But I guess if it's an educated, empowered team around what those two things look like, then you don't have to go to the founder or the manager to refer a particular response. Everyone is ready to respond how they need to respond.
Yeah, and to be honest, it shouldn't feel restrictive. So like what it should be is, like I know people want to have some fun, but in the end, it needs to be with the corporate identity is we need to establish who we are, right? So it's like, if you are the serious insurance broking business, right? It's not that you can't have fun at all, but it's like, this is what you got to think about it is. Don't think of it as a set of rules. Think about it as, how will my customer translate this in their mind, right? So if you as a business, see, this is the thing, right? People go, oh, marketing's got all these rules. It's not rules for rules' sake. People's attention spans are small, right? Their memory is even smaller. So if your brand and your business sounds like 17 different personalities, you're not getting remembered, right? Think about the brands that stick in your mind, even the small ones. They stick in your mind because they are consistent and clear, right? And they know that they are consistent and clear because they have a brand guidelines, and the brand guidelines are adhered to and they are built on the corporate identity.
Perfect. No, I like that. So, us being, insurance advisory business, it's something I'm quite passionate about.
Of course you'll be. I hope so.
The Confio side. But with the Socius, we're all about, I guess, building the generation of next business leaders, right? And so any of the listeners, they're going to be either small business owners or people who are looking to start their own business. And so what I'm keen to know is, what's one key business risk that you manage internally yourself in your business, and what's a tip that you can provide to those listening around how to manage that business risk?
Look, can I cheat and say two? Because sorry, you're like, God, it breaks a lot of rules.
Two.
The first one I am very passionate about is cybersecurity.
Yep.
Right. I think that being a marketer, right, you wouldn't think I think about it too much, but I've done a few courses on it, and that was the biggest thing. It's not if, it's when. Right. And I think small business owners to big business must take cybersecurity very seriously. And that's not just like the way I manage it internally, besides having insurance, is I train my team every month. So like, how you said, Will, that you get together with your team and share the values. We do that every month. So we did it today, being the first start of February, right? And so we share our values, mission, vision. But then on top of that, we share risks around cybersecurity and leaks. And what I mean by that is accidental exposure of, it's never happened before, but I always say to my team, you are the biggest strength and the biggest weakness in cybersecurity and privacy, right? I said, we sign a lot of NDAs and things for our clients. So as a result, the whole team, not just me, the whole team is responsible for our security. So it's like, any suspicious emails, report. Anything that looks dodgy, let us know. It would be like, don't show your friends and family your files. Right? Don't move them out of the folder. Things like that is so important. I know businesses might be like, I'm busy trying to do my work, but leaks and things damage your reputation. You won't have the business after that. Cybersecurity, you can go down for weeks, right? And then businesses don't trust you anymore. So that's the first one. The second one is being a consultant. The biggest risk is saying something that I shouldn't, or being trusted in the area. Fortunately, it's never happened, but having like professional indemnity insurance and all of that, being a consultant. And I think that small businesses need to realize how much value that they're trying to give that can be misconstrued as advice. And you need to be really super careful as business owners that you're just trying to explain your product or service, but make sure that you're not leaning into the whole, people could go, well, I'm relying on that, making a business decision, then they do, and then something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So those two things, big time.
It's more than just insurance. It's about how to manage risk.
Yep.
That's the key that I wanted to highlight.
Yeah.
Because whether it's cyber or whether it's professional advisory risk,
Being mindful.
there's so many other forms of risk management that you can undertake before you purchase insurance.
Yeah.
Insurance is not the thing that you utilize to ensure that risk is covered off entirely.
Well, let's say prevention's better than cure.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's about minimizing your risk and improving the probability that does not occur, if that makes sense. So I love the idea of training your staff around cyber risk. And I love the idea of highlighting previous examples, previous claims examples, previous breaches that have occurred. How did that occur?
Yeah.
So the team are aware and the team are very conscious.
And
one of the things I do love is running like phishing tests as well internally.
We've done that.
So if you've done that, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the highlighting thing is it's not just about insurance, it's about managing risk.
Yeah. And sorry, I didn't mean to sell for you.
No, it's fine.
Like the training of the team, honestly, you know what it is? Complacency is the biggest killer of business.
Yeah.
And even not just yourself, but your team, right? It happens. People go, I could just, I could. Whereas what I do is I jump on our Slack channel and I record a voice message and I'll just say, hey team, just a general reminder, I'll even say, we received a phishing email last night. This is what it looked like, guys. Just to remind yourselves that anything that looks like it's come from me, and you check the email and I'll go, see that? That's a suspicious email. And it's so simple to click and go, oh no, or an attachment. And I said, as soon as that happens, we could lose everything. And I'm like, so it's really important. And training the team and reminding them every month or so, top of mind, excellent.
Yeah. Just over as an example, just over the last month, individually, there were about 30 emails that were pulled up in our spam and potentially, malicious activity just in our emails, from either pretending to be William Freitas or Chris Melotti, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It definitely does occur.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason why I highlight this is because as a business community, we always focus on growth.
Yes.
And we often forget about managing business risk.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm passionate about. And I love ensuring that businesses are clear on what their business risks are so they can grow with confidence.
Yeah. And look, I'm with you. I'm very you wouldn't think so. I'm very risk averse, right? So I'm very conservative when it comes to that. I'm always saying to the team, like, we haven't used these folders in a while. Let's archive them. Let's move them off. I have about 6 backup systems.
Yeah.
And my business is only quite small, but I'm always like, be careful of this, watch this, like, don't fall for any of this, and it's a big thing.
The smaller we are, sometimes the more vulnerable.
We're easy targets.
Correct. So to finish off, I want to chat about your vision.
Yes.
I want to chat about your vision both personally for Chris Melotti and professionally for Melotti Content Media. So where do you see yourself in the next 5-10 years? Tell us a little bit about that.
Great question. So for me, I've already started to personally move out of Melotti Content Media and moving it to my sister Angela. She's already managing director. So my future is going to be in the consulting side because it's what I love, right? I'm a big passionate person around networking because I think that human centricity is going to be the key going forward with AI and all this digital, that human to human is going to be absolutely essential. So my next 5 years will be me moving out of that business, Angela running it with the team and me doing consulting. But then we work in tandem because what'll happen is things will, things go from me to the agency and the agency executes. So that's the next 5 years. The other thing would be is probably I've opened another business called AI Ethics, with Melotti AI Ethics, which is where we're doing policy writing for AI. So I'm big on the policies and the ethics side. And we're also, we're growing, like we've recently got some really big clients and I want to continue that trajectory. Like I don't want to be big, but I like that I'm respected by like Bunnings, O'Brien Glass and all these kind of things that are big. And that's my trajectory as well, is growing the business, solidifying its success, which was our plan this year. And the next 5 years, consultant.
Perfect. I think the vision looks bright.
Thank you.
For you, sir. It was interesting. One of my, I made a newish friend about 3 years ago, and his name is Pierre O'Sullivan. I'm not sure if you remember his name, but he and I were chatting about sort of marketing and copywriting, and he sort of said, I work with this amazing guy.
Yeah.
He came and sat down with us and did this strategic process and, pretty much came up with this incredible document. Have a look. And we're like, yeah, this is a great document. What's the guy's name? Chris Melotti. So that's always a fantastic example of a client testimonial in the live, not one that's on the website, not one that's on Google, but one that he was sharing with myself.
He's a
and other
lovely
friends.
guy.
So
yeah,
he's a fantastic guy. So Chris, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks,
it's been a pleasure to
have
you.
You made my day just with that alone, like that. The whole podcast that you landed.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're very welcome. If people want to reach out, LinkedIn.
Yep, LinkedIn, Christopher Melotti, and just Melotti. It is melottimedia.com.au, simpler, or christophermelotti.com.au.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Will.
Socius, thank you for joining us today. Please hit the subscribe button if you've enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to be part of the Socius community, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in touch. Cheers.